Let's read verses 4 through 6. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected, "Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages." He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and as a keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Fill in the blank number 2. The party pooper protests. The party pooper protests. There will always be those who protest. There will always be those who say, "Oh, don't do that. Do this." Now, they are not all corrupt as Judas. But here's a few tips on how you can tell which ones are corrupt. They tend to protest after the fact. Judas protested after she had poured the nard out. What was Mary going to do? Get down and sop it back up? Put it back into the bottle? I don't think so. Protesters tend to protest after the fact. They also protest over things that are already being worked at. Jesus helped the poor. And Jesus was the poor. But many times protesters never see the end to the need. There's never enough. There's never time to worship. There's never time to praise. And then there's always ulterior motives. Judas's motive was greed. But there can be others that can be more or less noble. The point is, when it comes to party poopers in worship, the devil's main irritation in the world is believers who worship. So stealing it is a high priority. The devil hates the love that you have for Jesus, and he's going to do anything in his power to cheapen it. In the end, party poopers can be open to teaching. We remember when Peter was saying to Jesus, "Quit all this crucifixion stuff. Don't go ahead with this." And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." We see later in Peter's life that he came around, that he saw, okay, I see what he was trying to do. But what do we see in the life of Judas? Suicide. The party pooper never came around. Let's move on, because now we see Jesus' response in our next 2 verses. Verses 7 and 8. "Leave her alone," Jesus replied. "It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." Fill in the blank number 3. The passion is praised. The passion is praised. Jesus says 3 things here that I think we need to take note of. First off, he says, "Leave her alone." Jesus says, "Leave her alone." Worship is a public expression of a private relationship. Don't judge too quickly or too harshly, as Judas did. You'll notice, Mary didn't take Judas's nard and pour it on Jesus. Mary didn't attempt to pour the nard on Judas. People's public expression of worship is their own. Let people love Jesus without judgment. The next thing he said is, "It was intended for my burial." You'll notice straight up, Jesus says, well, it wasn't quite on time. I'm not quite buried yet, but that's okay. Because this act of worship was done with passion and maybe not perfection. Can I just raise your awareness that there has never been a perfect sermon preached by me here. There's probably never been a perfect bulletin produced by Rhonda. Music, although it does get close to perfect, there are some times that falls short of perfection. But what we can offer Jesus is passion. and our hearts in worship. We don't need to worry too much about perfection when we have passion. Now, if both passion and perfection are gone, then we can have some problems. The third thing Jesus says is you will always have the poor among you. And this is where we start to get really deep. Your love for Jesus must come first. Your relationship with Him tops all the other noble causes that you have. And worship flows from the cause of loving Jesus. Or all of our other noble causes that are not extensions of His love will dry up. Next application. Why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do? Do all of your noble activities, all of your church duties, all of your giving, does it flow out of the overflow of your love for Christ, or doesn't it? I don't think Mary ever thought, oh man, Jesus needs anointed. I don't think anybody else is going to do it. Oh, and if I leave it up to those disciples, they'll use the wrong stuff, or they'll use the cheap stuff. Well, I guess I'd better get down to anointing Jesus. It wasn't that at all. Mary, out of the overflow of her love for Jesus, poured out all she had.